In this video, we're going to have a look at how to create a layer that you can use in your drawings. We'll have a look at the color setup, the type of line, and then we'll maybe use that layer that you've created to help draw an auxiliary drawing. So to create a layer, you need to go to up here to the Layers tab, and this icon here, the Layer Properties. Click that. Now at the top of this menu, you can see that there are some smaller icons here. You want to click the Create New Layer. It'll prompt you to call it some sort of name. I'm going to call this PRO, and that's going to stand for Projection Line. The next thing to do is to choose a color. So click on the automatic color that's here, and a window will pop up where you can choose a color. Now I'm going to choose a different line type. So under the line type menu, you can click. So this window will appear, and you can choose what kind of line type you want for this new layer that you're creating. I'm just going to tick ISO dash. That's okay for me. You can load other types of lines to give you a broader choice to choose from, but I'll just take this one. Now that should be the layer created. So if we look up into the layers drop down here and we look for it, PRO, Pro for Projection. I'll click it to make it alive, and I'm going to use the line command, and I'll just draw a line there. So we'll delete that. And now I'm going to show you how to use the UCS command, which will enable you to draw auxiliary drawings. In order to see what's going on here, you'll have to turn on your grid. So I'm going to come down here to the grid mode. I could have pressed F7, but I'm just going to click on that to make the grid visible. The command is UCS. This stands for User Coordinate System. So I'm just going to type that on the screen, UCS. You'll see the command prompt brings up a list of commands. It's the top one. So this is UCS. Click that. Now, the UCS command, if you look at the cursor, you can see that there's that small white box with the arrow pointing you down to this ribbon here where there are other options. So in this case, I'm going to choose Object. And if I hover back again, it wants you to select an object to align the UCS to. So because it's an auxiliary drawing, I'm going to choose this diagonal line here. So I simply click on that and watch what happens to the grid. The grid is now in alignment with this inclined plane. So what I'll do next is I'm just going to go up to the layers, and I'm going to turn off the dimensions and leaders just for a moment. Now I want to perform an offset command, so I'm going to type offset. The next thing to do is I'm just going to drag that line by one of its grips to extend it. Now if you're doing this, you need to make sure that your ortho restrict is turned on. So I'll drag it to down here. It doesn't matter how far you drag it, as long as you drag it for a distance that's long enough. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go into the layer that we just created, this PRO layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it to project points, and this is going to form the framework for our auxiliary drawing. So line command, I'm going to take that top corner, and if I project up, the lines I project up will be at 90 degrees to this offset line that you've created. Just going to drag a wee bit, enough space to draw it. Choose the line command, and I'm going to take all the points of that drawing that are relevant. Now if I'm correct, I think we've taken all of the points from this projection that we require to construct our auxiliary view. The only thing we don't know is how wide this object would be had we looked at it from an end view. So I'm going to make that up just now. So what I'll do is I will move back into the drawing sheet layer, and I'm going to use the offset command again. So I'm going to take this line, and offset it by 90. Realistically, I have to make sure that I have enough width to have this circular feature, which is actually a borehole that travels down through that inclined plane, centered on this line and extending out to these two hidden detail lines. What I can do now is use the trim command, and I'm going to get rid of the excess parts of this drawing that we don't require. I'm still in the drawing sheet layer, so I'm going to use the line command, and I'm going to put in some of the detail from the end points of these lines, and as I go along I'm going to take out some of these projection lines that we no longer need because we have created the detail on our auxiliary drawing. So what you can see now is I have that face which represents this top edge. So I'll continue to add these in. We'll do the extremities of this. I can now remove these two projection lines, and you see I have that detail there. I must have overshot the line here somewhat, so I'll take care of that just now, simply by using the grip and dragging it back to the extent. Now, this line here is going to be hidden detail. If we look in from that direction, you wouldn't actually see this bottom corner of the object. However, we know it's still there, so that needs to be represented on our auxiliary view with the use of a hidden detail line. So I'll just quickly move down to the layer for hidden detail, and I'm going to use a line command to place that into my auxiliary view, and then remove that projection line. So you can see that that hidden detail line is now present. The only other thing we need to do now is place the information that relates to this borehole. So I'm going to introduce another center line. I will take it from the midpoint here down to the midpoint there. And since it is in fact a center line, we'll make it just project out slightly further than the confines of the drawing itself. Now this intersection here will be the center. So I'll do a further offset command. This time I'm going to make it 20. And I'm going to offset this center line, both sides. I'm going to perform a trim command, and I'm going to remove a little bit of the excess of those lines that I don't need. The rest can simply be picked up and deleted. So in order to get this feature here placed onto the auxiliary view, I'm going to use the ellipse command. But I'm going to pull the drop down and I'm going to use an axis end ellipse. So they are axised from the center line. So I'm going to click on that intersection, click on the second intersection, and then move down here to get one of these perpendicular marks that give me the end limit. I'm just going to place it. I can now delete the remaining projection lines. I can get rid of these two center lines as well. And at this point we've created an auxiliary drawing of that object. So now I'm going to turn back on the layers that I turned off. I believe it was just the dimensions and leaders. Pop them back on. And don't worry about this text anymore, but we can scroll to have a look at the drawing. Finally, we want to turn this UCS back to the way it was. So I'm going to type UCS once more, hit enter, and this time I'm going to go down and choose the world option. And you can see that the grid lines return back to their normal orientation. And if you still don't want the grid lines to be there, simply go back to grid mode, turn the grid off.